right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. But today on the show, we are doing one of our backwards episodes. It is a breaking it apart episode, as we call them around here, when we take a look instead at an older movie and what movies it might have inspired. And today is actually a first ever. This is our first ever super breaking it apart episode, where instead of just one 30, 40-minute long conversation, I'm having, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 smaller conversations about the topic at hand. And the topic at hand is 1993's Super Mario Brothers, a movie that you'll find as we get through some of these conversations has been, reassessed over the years. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still insane and a little all over the place, and definitely takes quite a few liberties with the Super Mario Brothers property, but is really a lot of fun and quite a unique experience, and the kind of movie that we're probably never going to get ever again. But we got a lot of great conversations coming up here. We will be talking with Kevin Brackett, Joe Black, Pete Abeyta, Derrick Patterson, Tara Giancaspro, and the VG Mobster. Great conversations coming up. Before we get to them, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. Also, I wanted to say, this episode is coming out on my birthday, and I mean, what better way to celebrate my birthday than with Super Mario? So let's get into a whole bunch of conversations about Super Mario Brothers. All right, Kevin Brackett is back with us to talk some Super Mario Brothers. How's it going, Kevin?
Hey, I'm hanging in there, David. It's, it could be worse. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I get you. But, how can we not be excited to talk about you're going through all this construction, the Wrecking Crew themselves, the Super Mario Brothers?
Yeah, Mario's first job, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you, I mean, first of all, I'm having you on today because I was thinking to myself, like, who are some gamer friends of the show that I've had before? I need gamers to talk about the Super Mario Brothers and to talk about this movie. But going back to 1993 and this movie, what was your first experience watching this?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, I've been a huge Mario fan since I was a kid. I started playing the NES and Super Mario Bros., the original, when I was 2 years old. So I have home videos of me back in 1989. It would have been when I was 2, and I was playing it, beating levels and everything, like actually able to hone in, and it was just something that was really special to me since I was a little kid. But anyway, when this movie came out, even though I was really young, I think I found it on VHS. I didn't make it to the theater for this one, but this is a movie that I wore out on VHS. I think I may have rented it from the grocery store at that time. That's what we did back in the day.
Sure.
When not only video stores existed, but they were in your grocery store. That's something a lot of kids won't be able to relate to whatsoever.
Yeah.
So anyway, this movie was hugely special to me because not only did I love Mario and love Nintendo, but it's like we get a live action movie, and I grew up with all the video game movies, right? So I mean, I know Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Double Dragon, and these were like those were 4 movies that were on rotation all the time. But this one, even though it was weird and even though it did stray from the source material just a little bit, this is always one of my favorites because I just love Mario.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's just so wacky. Like, it takes, like, kind of the essence of Mario and just kind of builds on it in so many, like, weird and crazy ways, and that's going to make it a fun one to kind of get into influences here because there's just so much going on in this movie. But, I feel like this was a movie that it had a lot of baggage to it too, because like there was like, first of all, how do you make a Super Mario Brothers movie? And then there's the reaction to it, which was, this is one of the worst movies ever made, is kind of like the story that was around it, even though the cult was slowly building over the years. And nowadays, I think most people recognize how just ridiculous and fun it is. But so yeah, there's going to be a lot of directions to go here, but let's start getting into some puzzle pieces. What do you think this movie might have actually inspired in some way?
Well, first of all, I have kind of an amalgam of a puzzle piece, if you'll let me. And
Sure.
those other three video game movies that I mentioned, it was hard to pick just one, but this really set the template for making a live action video game movie, right? There was
Hmm.
nothing else at the time that had done it on this scale and with this kind of budget. And to actually bring these characters to life, which, I mean, let's be honest, have you ever read the instruction manual for Super Mario Brothers?
A
Like,
lot of crazy shit in there for
it's
sure.
crazy. And so this movie is actually maybe closer to the source material than other Mario properties because I mean the original Mario Brothers game is that like Koopa has turned the people of the Mushroom Kingdom into bricks and coins and animals and things like that. So it's like this movie really does draw from the source material as small as it was at the time. And so this was doing, I think, justice. Like we want movies to be closer to the source material, right? We don't want people to just take the names of characters and just go far afield from them. Then the fans are like, hey, what the heck are you doing? So
Sure.
one, it actually did pay attention to some of it, just not the stuff that people remember.
Right.
And two, it's like they went all in on this movie. And I think for movies like Street Fighter to exist and Double Dragon and Mortal Kombat to take the basic idea of these characters that the player is taking control of and are just jumping around, doing some punches, doing all that stuff, and make a full feature out of a story that's so basic and just in a few pages of those manuals, maybe one page of a manual, is incredible. And so I think this proved they could do it. And then everybody got on board, even though the reception wasn't great on this one, but just the fact that they were making a Mario Brothers movie was like, let's do it. If they can do it, we can do it and ride the wave. And those three movies I mentioned, Double Dragon, Mortal Kombat, and Street Fighter, I still love to this day. I think they're so fun for what they are. They're going to be three movies that people will say are also the three worst movies ever made. And I don't
Sure.
care. I would watch any of those three movies or this as a fourth before I'd watch the new Mario Brothers movie any day of the week. I'd watch them 100 times before I'd watch the new Mario Brothers movie, which is a fun kids movie, but it's not what I'm looking for in a video game movie. And this stuff that I grew up with really set the template.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think Mortal Kombat probably has the best reputation of the bunch of these four if you kind of put them together into a box. But
Because it's Enter the Dragon, which is a good
yeah,
movie. I mean,
exactly.
but what? Even though that did have more inspiration than the other ones did, like the other ones are like, let's adapt this basic source material. Mortal Kombat goes, let's make Enter the Dragon and copy paste the character names.
Sure.
But if you're going to have a game about a tournament set on an island, what are you going to emulate? What story are you going to make out of that, right? And so
Exactly.
it's perfect, right? Like that for a video game movie that is based on what the tournament of Mortal Kombat is. That was a brilliant idea, and that was another one that I wore out the VHS just nonstop.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, I not hopefully not stepping on any pieces here or anything like that, but like hearing you talk about the manual and like the actual bits of Super Mario lore that people just don't even think about and stuff like that. I was kind of just thinking about Resident Evil and how like that movie series, at first glance you're like, well, why isn't this just in a haunted house like the first game? But
Right?
actually there's all this other stuff going on in the Resident Evil series that it kind of sticking to.
Well, and that's not one I had on my list, but that first Resident Evil movie was the best and the most fun, in my opinion. I really liked it, even though that strayed. That maybe strayed just as much as this movie strayed from the source material, but it did it well, and I think this one does it well. The
Yeah.
other Resident Evil movies, even though I don't know, they might have a character named Wesker that appears in the fourth or fifth or 12th movie or whatever, they don't feel like the Resident Evil games. I mean,
No.
those games are films. There's a story. I mean, even that first one in the 90s, I think 1998 on PlayStation 1, that first Resident Evil game with the cutscenes and the story about Jill there with stars and people disappearing and all that, like that's the movie I wanted. And so even though I had fun with Resident Evil, I did hope that it stayed a little bit closer to the story because you get to 2 and the stuff with Leon and Claire and Claire's the sister of Chris Redfield from the first game.
Sure.
So you have this continuing storyline that is basically like a film franchise, right? You have the template, and it's like, why did you not use some more of that? And the movies just get crazier and crazier. And, for what they are, if you dig those movies, there's no problem with that. But I wish they would have stuck a little bit more with the source material because, as you know, as the people that play the games know, they're great stories and great characters.
Oh yeah, I still say the game Resident Evil 4, if you cut the leprechaun, the rest of that game is like a perfect movie. It would work so well.
Resident Evil 4 is incredible. And so they just did a remake of it that I actually have not played yet. I heard it's amazing, though. There's like a modern PS5 remake of the game. But recently, let's say a couple years ago, they released it in VR. So I actually played Resident Evil 4 in VR, and that story is so cinematic. It is like living in a movie. And, even though the graphics are still kind of the old graphics, but they put you in VR and you do everything from like when you take your knife out, you grab it off your shoulder and slice. You take your gun out and you can drop the clip and put in a clip and you actually see it all happening in VR. And so to see this story unwrapping around you and then be in it, it's just a really neat experience, which brings storytelling to the next level of we have movies, obviously, and then we have video games that are very cinematic, and then being a part of it, I can only imagine that more games are going to go that route as VR hopefully will get more and more adopted and get better. And I will say that's just a really neat way to experience a story.
I want a VR adaptation of this Super Mario Brothers movie. That would be fun.
I'd never leave. I'd never leave.
What do you got for another piece?
Okay, so I'm going to go to some movies that came out a little bit later in the 90s. And again, I have a handful of them. But looking at my list here, I don't know. I mean, do you want me to give you a few or do you want me to just give you one?
If they go together, you can kind of squeeze them together.
Well, I'm going to give you two because they come out back to back in years. And I think the aesthetic tone, this one I'm really pulling heavily with the aesthetic tone of Super Mario kind of being I won't say lifted, but very similar visual style. I'm going to say 1997's Men in Black and 1998's Dark City.
Okay. All right.
I think those are two movies in the 90s that have this gritty aesthetic, and Men in Black kind of like just the way that the dinosaur, what do they call it, Dinotopia in the Mario
I think so.
movie?
Yeah.
I have it written down. I want to make sure I get it right. I would not. Oh, Dino Hatton. I'm sorry. See, I don't want to.
That it is.
I don't want to mess with any. Get any letters or anything.
Yeah, sure.
But just the way that Dino Hatton exists among New York, right? Like Men in Black takes place in New York, and there's these aliens that are living there, and nobody knows. You have in a similar way, Dino Hatton, where there's these dinosaur creatures, these beings that have de-evolved but have come from a different species, living in the same space, if not in a different dimension or a different reality, but inhabiting at the same time, right under your feet. The portal is underground to an alternate dimension, and nobody knows it, right? That's walking the Earth's surface. So I feel like Men in Black with the creatures living among us, and obviously some of the sci-fi elements have kind of a similar feel to them.
That's great. That's a really good one there. And I'd never really thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Men in Black, it does have that similar, like the other weird, science fiction world is right there, right underneath our feet. And then, I mean, to go to Dark City, God, talk about a movie that has a vision and just sticks to it.
Dude, Alex Proyas. I mean, obviously coming off The Crow, and then Dark City, while darker than Super Mario Bros. The movie, I mean, it's definitely darker, but still, when you look at Dino Hatton in that dark, gritty, like post-apocalyptic kind of, but like futuristic at the same time, just that dark, gritty feel. I feel like it shares a little bit of a similar look to it. This movie is very dark for as much as it is silly and the characters, and obviously when they get their outfits, they're very bright. But other than that, it's a very bleak look. Dino Hatton's a bleak, dark world, and Dark City is visually one of the coolest looking movies. The set design and the effects and everything, I love the aesthetic of that movie, and so I think there are some similarities.
Yeah, Dark City is just so many interesting elements, and I mean, like you said, it's a much darker movie, but when it comes down to it, like a movie taking so many big ideas and going just so deep into just all of them basically. It's a wild movie, and there's not a lot of movies like that where you can really say like you watch it and you're just like, wow, this is its own thing 100%.
Right.
And Alex Proyas really just went all in on it. And I mean, it makes so much sense why it's kind of a love it or hate it movie, or a movie that in its own time kind of, failed basically, but then developed a cult later.
If Neon and A24 had existed, they're the ones that are doing stuff now that's semi-mainstream. And back then, movies that are that dark and that weird, for lack of a better word, much like Mario Bros, is a very weird movie by populist standards.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think the world was ready for it, is the thing.
Yeah.
And people, directors, visionaries like Alex Proyas and Tarsem Singh, who's
Mm-hmm.
another one of my favorites, they were making movies that had their own vision, their own feel to them. No one was making movies like The Cell or The Fall or Dark City. I would say they're in rarefied air, like Cronenberg, making movies that you can tell that's a Cronenberg movie.
Sure.
There's certain visionaries that make movies that it's like they are their own thing, and this movie exists there, Dark City exists there, and some of the other ones I mentioned. So, and Dark City also has another one of these. This world exists in this kind of parallel dimension, parallel existence, which is another, I think, cool connection to Super Mario Bros.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's get Tarsem Singh to make a video game movie.
Oh my
While
gosh,
we're
why is Tarsem not working? I don't
yeah,
understand it.
seriously,
He's made some of
that's
the most
weird.
stunning films of all time. The Cell and The Fall. I think The Fall is maybe possibly one of the greatest looking movies of all time.
Totally.
We're just not getting, well, it's not as abstract, but like when I saw Barry Jenkins, If Beale Street Could Talk, that
Hmm.
film, every frame's a work of art, and it's photographed so beautifully, and the story's so beautiful that movie, I mean, obviously plot wise and story wise is very different, but it reminds me of The Fall with a lot of the emotional beats of the story, and then
Mm.
also the breathtaking photography in it. But we just don't get a lot of directors that get to do their thing like that. Obviously, now when you go to the art house, you'd probably say stuff like, I don't know. There's a lot of directors in art house that get movies that don't get to the mainstream, right? And so, but we're talking about like wide release movies. Maybe a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Hmm.
Super Mario Bros. And weird movies that have paved the way for more modern movies that have actually been released and received on a wide level and actually won Oscars and gotten
Yeah.
their critical acclaim that they deserve. I think that this movie has paved the way for that, and again, was just way ahead of its time.
I was wondering if Everything Everywhere All at Once would end up in, one of these super episode conversations here, because yeah, I mean, as far as a movie that goes in all kinds of wacky, crazy directions and yet is 100% accepted by the audience,
Yeah,
and
I love
everybody
it.
just loves it,
I think I think that was one of my I mean, that was my favorite film of the year. I was so happy it got the critical reception. I saw it very early. I saw it, I didn't see it at a press screening, but I saw it, I believe, the very first week it was out. I was so excited to see it just based on the buzz around it and some of the visual stuff that I saw and people involved. I was like, I'm in. And I saw the movie and just left it like credits rolled. I fell in love with the movie. I saw it again in theaters after that. I was telling everyone, this is before like it got the extended release and everyone was talking about it, first week release. And I'm telling everyone, go see Everything Everywhere All at Once. And at that point, I didn't know that no one knew. I don't think that it was going to break into the mainstream and even be, talked about on the level it was for the Oscars. But it was that good of a movie. And the fact that a movie that weird, I'm going to use that word again, and that's not a derogatory term. I like weird
sure.
stuff. Mainstream movies have gotten so boring lately,
Safe.
and yes, and they're not taking risks. They're all remakes or reboots, and not to sound like a broken record, but that's exactly what so many movies are, is a broken record on the same formula. And I think now this is why Super Mario Bros. The movie stands up even better than it did. It just keeps getting better and better because look at the vision that
Yeah.
that the directors Rocky Morton and Annabel Jankel had. Look at what they created from a page of source material of the Mushroom Kingdom has been taken over by Koopa. People are being turned into things, and dinosaurs exist. look at that work that they had. They had that to go off of, and then created this world of all these wacky, beautiful, amazing colors and practical effects and slime and goo and dinosaurs and special effects with electricity and rockets and of course all the little Easter eggs sprinkled throughout it. But they built that, and it was so original for being based on an IP that I think that's the problem. I'll mention the Super Mario Brothers movie, whatever that new one was, the Illumination one.
Yeah.
Yes, it was an entertaining kids movie. It made over $1 billion. People loved it, and that's great. But all it was, I called it Easter eggs, the movie.
Yeah, it was.
And it had, think about it, it had what, 20 Mario games to base the lore off of? Like this had one Mario game, maybe a couple from Japan. I don't know if Mario 3, when was The Wizard? 91? Maybe Mario 3 was just coming out, but probably in development. Yeah, probably in development. Like Mario 3 wasn't even officially out yet for this movie. So they had a couple of games to go off of maybe. And the new Mario movie had 20 plus whatever. And it was just like, boom, Easter egg, Easter egg, Easter egg. And while that could be fun, it's not original. And this movie is, for the most part, is most original as you can be, adapting an IP that's very young. This movie is so original.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of great stuff to go off of for this one, but I think it's a good place to wrap it up. Any closing thoughts, anything you wanted to kind of mention that we didn't get to on Super Mario Brothers?
The only thing I would mention too, I had a couple of other things that I won't go through the list of them, but I think the Wachowskis and I think The Matrix and Jupiter Ascending. I think that this movie also paved the way for filmmakers like the Wachowskis, who also have a vision and a voice and make some weird stuff that I really like. I think this movie paved the way for them to see that, yes, you can do this on a wide mainstream level with big budgets. And so I think there are some connections with those films, especially The Matrix, like waking up and realizing that your reality isn't what you thought it was. And the people of Manhattan not knowing that there's a whole different world out there that exists right under your feet, like we mentioned before, and being able to wake up and be like, wow, there's more out there. And
you can't be a bigger influence than being an influence on The Matrix. I mean, come on.
Right? And like, how many things has that inspired to been an influence for? So I do think this movie, again, I think it's brilliant. I don't say that ironically. I think it's brilliant. I think it has a vision, is way ahead of its time. It's fun. It's entertaining. It does still show love to the series, even though people don't think it does. But for those same reasons, makes it feel unique. Makes it feel like you're watching something you've never seen before, especially at that time. And it's a really fun movie.
Kevin, where can people find you and your podcast?
Sure. So I'm a co-host of a podcast called Real Spoilers, REEL Spoilers. And what we usually do is cover the biggest movie of the week, just because we want as many people to be a part of the conversation. So a lot of time it's whatever we think will be the biggest movie at the box office. We don't always go that route. Sometimes we just say, hey, that movie might not really be that fun to talk about, and we'll go watch something more like a indie or art house, which are kind of my jam. I'm excited when we go that route. But anyway, what we want to do is be kind of a book club for movies. So you see the movie, and then we're a bunch of friends that get together and talk about it. We spoil it. Obviously, it's in the name. And we are at, I think we just recorded 812. Wow. So we've been around since 2013, and there's a big back catalog. You should be able to find them all. I think maybe it starts at like 150 on Apple, because I think they limit you to 700 podcasts or something weird like that. But on Spotify, you can go back and listen to number 1 if you dare and hear the evolution. And there's just a ton of stuff from the past decade plus on there. So give it a listen.
Right on. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for doing the show. Hopefully we'll get you back for a full one of these days, but I was really happy to get you on this one.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. It was a blast.
I actually, for first grade, when the movie came out the summer between kindergarten and first grade, my mother took me clothes shopping and was wondering why I was buying so much green. and I told her, I confessed that it was because Luigi was so cool.
Wow, so you're a Luigi guy too, huh?
That's well, when I was a kid, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, me too. I've always been a Luigi guy. I'm still a Luigi guy. I mean, Mario's awesome, though. We love Mario around here. But Joe Black is with us. We're talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993, just called Super Mario Brothers. Joe, Are you a big gamer? We've talked about movies so much on this podcast. We never really talk about video games.
There's a reason, because I'm not. No,
Yeah. Okay.
all of my favorite video games are on the Nintendo 64.
Okay,
And
yeah.
by all, I mean both of my
Yeah.
favorite video. I really liked Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, and I really liked WWF No Mercy.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. But I will say Mario Brothers actually is legit probably my favorite game. I went to youth group when I was a kid, and they used to have an arcade upstairs at the church that my mom and I went to, and that arcade had like all these different consoles. One of them that they had was an 8-in-1. It was 8 different games in one. It was Super Mario 3, Gradius, Goonies, 1942. It was a bunch. Double Dragon. It was a bunch of them. But when they got rid of those, I actually took that one.
Nice.
And I had that in my garage for decades. I had the Super Mario. I can beat that game in 8 minutes.
That's a good skill to have. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny because doing this episode, which is something I've talked about doing for a long time now, as much as we haven't talked video games before, you and I, and all the times you've been on the show, I feel like Super Mario Brothers from 1993 has come up somehow in various random conversations between the two of us. And so I think we kind of share that in common, that this has just been a movie that, despite its history, maybe it's being a little bit reclaimed nowadays, but it was certainly not something that people claim to like over the years. I feel like we kind of always did.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I had every toy. I even had like the Devo gun, and I had like the cop car. I told you, I wanted to dress like Luigi just to go to school when I was a kid. Yeah, I also think that movie has had much more of an influence than people think. I mean, video game movies were happening at the time. That was like the big thing, I think this was the first, right? And then Street Fighter,
sure,
which I also just adore. Street
boy.
Fighter, Mortal Kombat, I think is great. I love all of the Resident Evil movies, like all 6 of them. I thought were just terrific. I really like video game movies. I think that for me, it's video games are almost like television, where I don't want to invest that much time in something, even though I get the idea, like, you're interacting with it, you're blah, blah, blah. I don't care. One of the reasons why I like Tony Hawk 2 and why I like No Mercy and all that is because you can be done with it in 15 minutes if you want, you know what I mean? And so I always like the world of video games, and I find them very creative. I'm the one person on the planet who liked Borderlands.
I was just about to say, if anyone thinks Joe is lying right now, he gave Borderlands 5 stars.
But don't. I mean, but the 5 stars, that's one of the few times where I pulled I'm giving it 5 stars for the sake of, like, realistically, it's like a 3.5, 3.5. But I champion the idea of treating video game movies, especially, for what they are, which is just, goofs, fun.
They're a sandbox of ideas that already existed, and now you can just do whatever you want with them.
Right, and I also, so many people with Borderlands were like, why are you getting so many great actors into this movie? It's like, what? The people who like these kinds of movies don't deserve great acting in their movies? Go to hell. Yeah. And actually, it's funny we're jumping the gun, because Borderlands was a big puzzle piece for me. That's
nice.
Like a huge, because I mean, like, you got Bob Hoskins, and Dennis Hopper in the original film. You know what I mean? These are not, and John Leguizamo, who at the time was just kind of, coming up, Carlito's Way and stuff like that. But like, they actually went, Fisher Stevens, everybody in that movie is just like really terrific and very dedicated to what the movie is, as much as, you hear the rumors about how much everybody hated shooting it, whatever. But yeah, I think that's kind of what freaked people out, especially when that movie came out. They're like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be the movie about the plumber who throws fireballs at turtles. Right, you know what I mean? Like why is this so, like, realistic? You know what I mean? It's a bummer that there's one part in Mario Brothers in the movie that I think actually it's what I call the Wild Wild West moment, which I think I've talked to you about on your show before, where how, like, when you're doing something so radically out there that if there's even one thing that tips the scale, people will turn on you. You know what I mean? Like, one thing. And in Wild Wild West, that's the best example I can think of, which is when Will Smith cross-dresses for that one ridiculous part. The rest of that movie is terrific. That one scene is the thing that everybody can latch onto and be like, that movie's dumb.
Right,
And I think Mario Brothers has one of those moments, unfortunately, and it's when Scapelli, spoilers for a 30-year-old movie, Scapelli gets zapped with the Devo gun. He like transforms back into a chimp.
Right.
And everyone around him laughs. They're like, ha ha ha. Like, ha ha. No, like people would be like, what the fuck just happened? Like Trump just got turned into a chimp in front of our eyes. This what the fuck is happening? Yeah. So like, I it's a bummer that moment exists, because I think that the rest of the movie strikes a really incredible tone that other movies have been afraid of. You know what I mean? But then the flip side of it, Street Fighter made the opposite mistake, which is they married too much into the ridiculousness of it with a straight face, and people were like, "Well, this is too silly to be funny, or to be serious, and too serious to be silly." And the answer, I say, "Are you sure? These are kids' movies." You know what I mean?
Fair enough, absolutely. And I think you bringing Borderlands into this is actually great, because I do think that it is an example of another game with such a rich world and so much to draw from, and they take lots from the game, and they adapt that really well to, as well as it can be adapted to, the movie environment. But then they also just throw all kinds of other stuff that they come up with, because it does have to separate itself from the original game. It's got to be its own story. It's got to be its own thing. It can't just be the game. And I think that Borderlands, as much as I didn't like Borderlands, I think it does a good job of balancing that in a similar way that the Super Mario Brothers movie does.
Yeah, and I mean, Borderlands being PG-13 really like raises the flag of what the movie's supposed to be. It's not, you don't like forgive a movie for anything necessarily, but you do have to go into something with context. You know what I mean? So like a movie like Borderlands, even if it was done in post as a way to save the movie and stitch it together into something, obviously the design of the final product of Borderlands was, this is a movie for 10-year-olds.
Sure.
Like this is a movie for 10 to 13-year-old boys, specifically. So in the context of that, it's fine. It's, you know what I mean? And what's so funny is every little negative Letterboxd review I've seen, the majority of them say, if I was 12, I would love this. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's not the movie's fault that you're 40 years old and in here on a Friday night. You know what I mean? So again, all of people's complaints about Borderlands, I say it's only fair if you're not creating any kind of context. And and again, I did give it 5 stars, but again, it's because it's like, please make these kinds of movies for children again. I'm tired of these movies being adult entertainment.
Yeah, well, funny enough that you say that. I kind of felt that way about the Super Mario Brothers movie, the recent one from last year. I was like, this movie is appealing to the kid in me that loves Super Mario Brothers, and it's got all the Easter eggs, it's got all the stuff, and it's not a great movie, but I thought that people were way too harsh on that.
I agree, and here's the thing: like I saw the movie when I was I saw it in Colorado, and that movie did 0 for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't tickle any buttons. It like nothing. Like, I liked how it looked before they went into the Mario Land. Like, I thought the animation looked really cool, but But it didn't do anything for me. But again, I'm not an asshole. So like I'm pretty sure that I gave it 3.5 stars. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, sure, it's not for me, but I mean, like, again, a 6-year-old or David watching this movie, like this is for them, and people put in the work, and it's fine, it's good. So like why be I get a lot of guff for my kind of like out there opinions, but honestly, I'm only radical about the things that I think actually matter. Yeah. So if I don't like a movie, it's because there's something in there that I fundamentally disagree with. Not because I didn't like it or because like it's just not for me or whatever. Like, or even if it sucks, that doesn't even bother me. But if there's something fundamentally wrong at the core of that movie, or what I see as wrong, let me be subjective about it. That's when I, start, taking arms.
Yeah,
but
sure. Yeah,
I mean, again,
absolutely.
like, even if I thought that the new Mario Brothers movie fucking sucked, I mean, like, why be an asshole about it, I've got a good Mario Brothers movie, so I have no fucking stake in the game.
We don't need any more at this point.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, we got one puzzle piece in there. Let's go to one more puzzle piece. What else do you think might have been inspired by 1993's Super Mario?
Okay, so now this is going to sound insane, but it's not even that these kinds of movies were inspired by, but I think that Super Mario Brothers was the first through the gates that gave us things today, like what Marvel is, like what Quentin Tarantino does. I think that Mario Brothers was the first to say, hey, this big budget mainstream entertainment goofiness, why not play it straight? Why not believe in what you're doing no matter how silly it is? Yes, Bob Hoskins winds up a bomb that then walks along the street, and up the wall and explodes a lizard man. But there's no reason why you don't have to do your job and say, what if? You know what I mean? Ninja Turtles actually kind of does that very well too. The first Ninja Turtles movie, for some reason, was made by a group of people that went, well, I mean, what if? Yeah. What if there were Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that liked pizza? And I don't think that you get things like Inglorious Basterds if you don't have movies like Mario Brothers that kind of like pave the way. Again, I'm not saying that Mario Brothers is as good as Inglorious Basterds. That's insane. But
sure.
But you don't get them without it. So I actually think that more than it inspired things, I think it actually opened doors for things in a way. Because even though it was a bomb or whatever, when creative people see something like Mario Brothers, they go, hey, how come they got to do it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
you said what if? I think that what describes that better is like, why can't we? It's like the same thing. Like, why can't Quentin Tarantino kill Hitler in a movie? Why can't we do that thing?
Isn't it? Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. I know Rocky and Annabel, the directors of the film. I know Rocky much more. I've met Annabel a couple times, but I know Rocky very well. He's actually he's been in a couple of my movies. Suffrage out now on Amazon and TV.
There you go.
But Rocky, what's really cool about Rocky is he's the kind of guy who you give him something, like you give him a project and he goes, okay, what's the complete opposite way you should do this? Not the wrong way, but what's the complete opposite thing? Like Max Headroom. He created Max Headroom. The guy who directed Mario Bros. Created Max Headroom. And like his whole angle was, they said, hey, we need this hip new character that we want to have to promote all our hip new cool things for kids and new technology and shit. What do you got for us? And Rocky said, well, what's the opposite of hip and cool? I know, rich, white, and in a suit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was his whole take on it. You know what I'm saying? So Rocky is, and I see that now, knowing him now, I see that in Super Mario Brothers. And I know that there's so much criticism about how they ran that ship. And to be honest, like that ship was full of holes when they got thrown onto the deck. You know what I mean? And so, and it's unfortunate that, and look, Rocky's doing fine. Okay. But like, it is so unfortunate that somebody that creative and inventive got shut down so quickly. And I think that Spielberg had a lot to do with it. That may be for another podcast, but this movie came out around the same time as Jurassic Park came out first, and Rocky did get a call from somebody, I won't say who, but I'm just saying, like, I think that Spielberg had a lot to do with why this movie didn't succeed in Jurassic Park and them trying to protect that IP, not Spielberg directly.
Yeah.
But like them trying to protect Jurassic Park coming out, and honestly, Last Action Hero also came out that summer, and that's another movie like what we're talking about, like a kind of first through the gates. Pulp Fiction gets all the credit for being a meta commentary on movies, the state of films. Last Action Hero was a year before.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I personally think that the screenplay, at the very least for Last Action Hero, is better than the screenplay for Pulp Fiction. Truly. So again, I think that Super Mario Brothers, it really spoke to me as a kid. And, as you get older, and as I've gotten older, I should say, I shouldn't speak for anybody else. As I've gotten older and I've studied film and I've seen so many movies now that like it's, it all becomes a blur at one point. What I've noticed is that the things that I love has not really changed. Which isn't to say there are movies that I don't see now that I saw back then that I like now that I didn't, but Yeah. But it's not that things have changed. It's that what I've learned to do is I have a better understanding of what's important to me, what matters to me. Not even what I like necessarily, because there's a lot of things that that I don't like that happens in movies that I'm like, well, it must.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I got to say that I think that movies like Mario Brothers, if not Mario Brothers directly, and Last Action Hero, I think those are the kinds of things that like built that integrity in me as a filmmaker and as a person, because they were movies that were meant for kids, but like they weren't talking down to kids. Yeah, you know what I mean? It was, hey kids, you get to come into the grown-up room. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest problem with movies today. I think that, even as early ago as the mid 90s, movies were made for adults but kids could watch them, and now it's flipped. Movies are made for kids but adults can watch them.
Sure,
So-
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could get into a whole long conversation about that with like a lot of animated movies nowadays and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that those are some great pieces, though, to bring up for this one. Joe, where can people find you and your films and everything you're up to?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook at Blue Means Pregnant Films. We're updating the website right now, which is bluemeanspregnantfilms.com. We've got a couple of movies. Natasha Hall and its sequel Suffrage are available on Amazon and Tubi. Please check those out. I really love them both, especially Suffrage. Of the 16 movies I've made, that one's my favorite. And we've got a new film coming out called I Don't Know that'll be hitting the festival soon and hopefully coming out early next year. All three of those films featuring David Rosen, by the way, listeners.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, check them out, and thanks for the support.
Absolutely. Joe, thanks so much for being here. Pete Abeyta is back with us to talk about Super Mario Brothers. How's it going, Pete?
Oh, it's going fantastic, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you back, and glad to be talking about this one. This is such a interesting, unique movie that everybody seems to have different points of view on. I'm curious, you're a little younger than me. When was the first time you watched this movie?
So I was born in '86, and I was like the NES was a huge thing for me. So Super
Mhm.
Mario Brothers was a palpable part of my culture and my upbringing.
Yeah.
And I know I saw it on first run. I don't think it was in theater. We didn't do a lot of that, but
Mhm.
I'm guarantee we saw it on home video release later as a rental.
Okay, right on. Yeah, because I saw it in the theater. I'm 1980s, so I was a little older, and we were
Mhm.
going to the theater all the time at that point. And I remember being disappointed, as a lot of people were. And over the years, revisiting it, liking it a little more each time, and it's just it's something that really grows on you when you start like kind of getting into the ridiculousness of it all, and just the pure, unadulterated vision of we're gonna make a Super Mario Brothers movie, but it's also gonna be its own completely insane thing.
Yeah, it is disappointing the first time you see it because you have in your mind, you're like, oh, it's going to be bright and colorful. There's going to be a lot of jumping and bouncing, and it's depressing and bleak. And Dennis Hopper's an actual dinosaur mutant thing, and you're like,
Mhm.
what they do to Goombas? They're huge. They're supposed to be the smallest creature.
Yeah. I'm happy when I play Super Mario Brothers.
I know. and I had no reference for Bob Hoskin at the time, but I love him now because Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
Sure.
another great one from my childhood, has become one of my favorite movies of all time. And I didn't even realize until many years later into my adulthood that he's not even American.
Mhm.
And like he's doing the crazy Brooklyn Italian accent here, and then he's doing the like turn of the century gumshoe from in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he's a Cockney.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely crazy. The Brooklyn accent must be such a treat for any actor from another country to do. They must have so much fun.
Yeah, really.
So let's start getting into some puzzle pieces. What do you think this crazy movie might have inspired?
So this was 1993, and I don't think it's any stretch of the imagination that 2 years later, Tank Girl was not inspired by Super Mario
Okay.
Brothers.
I
Yeah.
love it. I absolutely love it. Now that's a movie that also has a big cult following that, maybe was a disappointment for some at the time, but
Mhm.
has definitely grown over the years. I haven't seen it since back then. And it's
Okay.
come up on this show before as a possible influence on things. But talk a little more about because I mean they are two very, very colorful, unique,
Mhm.
weird worlds. But talk a little more about that connection there.
Yeah, so I seen Tank Girl for the first time, I wanna say last year. It was a Patreon pick on our show,
Okay.
and somebody assigned it to us, and I've seen the cover a million times. And first of all, it's based off of a previous property. It's based off a comic book.
Sure.
So there's step 1. Step 2, they take this sort of weird dystopian future. So if you take all the human side and the real world out of Super Mario Brothers, and you're left with just the gross out weird underbelly world of the dinosaur world, you get kind of Tank Girl
Mhm.
because it is already in a dystopian land. There is chaos all over the place. There's weird mechanisms. There's like weird torture devices where they're sliding down long chutes into. I don't remember all of it, but just the like bananas nature of the characters, like Lori Petty's crazy hair
Yeah.
flying all over the place, looks like it could be a background character in the Super Mario Underworld.
Sure.
And then on top of that, there's these crazy like kangaroo human hybrid prosthetics. Ice-T is a weird kangaroo monster.
Yeah.
It's just that alone, and seeing this like entire race of creatures that are humanoid, other animal hybrids is enough to make me think, oh, that's just like the Goombas or just like the weird alien reptilian faced monsters that are under the ground in this place.
It's so funny that we watch like Star Wars or Star Trek and we like just accept it. Like, it's outer space. Like that's what all these different kinds of characters look like. But then we watch something like Super Mario or Tank Girl and we're like, this is crazy. Like,
I know.
but they're basically the same shit. But, it's funny. I think the newest movie that'll probably come up in this conversation, our friend Joe Black brought up Borderlands, the big flop from this year, the video game movie. And I think Tank Girl, if I had done an episode on Borderlands, would have been a major puzzle piece for that. I feel like that movie, we're doing this whole Super Mario Brothers movie just because we all love it. But I think that movie probably has an even bigger influence on things that have come since.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't like that movie when I watched it. It's
Uh-huh.
just it's too far. It's too bonkers.
Yeah.
And I like bonkers movies. Just watch The Substance. Could be my favorite movie of the year. And
Yeah.
it's insane. But this is almost like, I know that the movie was partially finished, and that could also be another puzzle piece, not unintentionally,
Mm.
because Super Mario Brothers had so much production issues, drunk directors, insane like behind the scenes stories, and this movie, Tank Girl, was not finished. Budget wasn't nearly enough to what they wanted to do. The vision was too big for what they had, and
Yeah.
you got this weird hodgepodge that almost just feels like it wasn't a committed project. And I think that's probably what sets it apart from something that's more polished, or even like a Star Wars universe thing. Is it just doesn't feel like any of it was done.
Yeah, yeah, and there's probably too many ideas, too many stops and starts, and yeah, it just everything just kind of gets mixed up together. But
Yeah.
let's go to another piece. What do you got next?
Okay, so the next one is just a few years after that, and we're now looking at the ill-fated again production disaster of The Island of Dr. Moreau. So
Yes.
the Richard Stanley, John Frankenheimer hybrid that is, there's documentaries made about it. There's behind the scenes stories to death. There's Marlon Brando being a prima donna. So
Mm,
there's a bunch of things in the production side there, but you also have the kind of A plot of this is a B plot of Super Mario, where you have this godlike creature or godlike figure that is doing human experiments,
yeah.
and King Koopa is doing de-evolution on his populace,
Yes.
and it's a punishment for these people. And then in Dr. Moreau, you have these experiments to try to turn them into animal hybrids again. So there's a lot there, and couldn't even tell you if I've seen the entire thing start to finish, but it's been a long time since I've ever watched it.
It's a completely insane movie, and we're sitting here talking about a completely insane movie. So, I mean, it definitely fits in the continuum. I feel like Super Mario Brothers is a movie that we would probably love to see a behind the scenes feature, just
Mhm.
completely, on the making of, just like with the Dr. Moreau. And yeah, I think that's a really great pull and a great connection there with the King Koopa character and his plans and just the playing God nature of all that. And so that's a really fun one that I had not.
Megalomania.
Yeah, absolutely, and I had not expected that to come up, so I am very happy with that piece right there. That's great.
Cool, awesome.
Uh, let's go to another one. What's next?
So the next one is more of a character vibe match, and this is a underrated comedy that bombed when it hit theaters from 2006, Idiocracy.
Oh,
The dumbed down nature of the world there feels like, and even some of the production, very much a soundstage, very much built set streets with little kind of rinky dink cars driving through the production, and you can tell it's not outside, it's not exterior. In this one, more green screen than anything, but just the people that you run into are like they feel like they're already de-evolved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's the centuries of the dumbing down of society over progression which has done it. But whenever I watch that movie, Idiocracy, I always think I should probably watch Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's an interesting one. This is a world, this view of, is it Dino Hatton or something, whatever the
Yeah,
city,
something like that.
yeah, whatever it's called. Yeah, everybody is kind of ridiculous, dumb, like, just kind of dim-witted, like, just there's definitely idiocracy like nature to the way that the world has kind of devolved, and that's even before anybody is hit with the devolver. So
Yeah.
everything's already just kind of stupid everywhere. So yeah, that's a
Plus-
good one. That's interesting.
Yeah, plus the leader in Idiocracy is President Camacho,
Yeah.
played by Terry Crews, and he's like, when the people look at him, it's like that's a real man,
Yeah.
He's got muscles, he's got the
Yeah.
long hair,
Mhm.
he talks smooth and loud, he's very charismatic, and King Koopa, I don't know, outside of just being born into whatever he is, what he provides for the rest of the people, except for that he dresses nice, he seems to be charismatic, and he's just a little different than everybody else in a
Yeah.
more evolved sort of way.
Sure, absolutely. I think another thing about character-wise is, they're very different movies, Idiocracy and Super Mario Brothers. But I think if you were to like cut any one character out of either movie and put them in the other movie, they'd probably fit just perfectly. Like, it's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah,
Yeah, and there's also a little bit of a hero's journey in Idiocracy.
sure.
He's really just trying to find himself, but at the same time, he's trying to save Maya Rudolph's character, Rita, and then he's also trying to save the day, get the plants to grow.
Sure.
And he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, in a sense, he does, but the Super Mario Brothers, they're just flying by the seat of their pants, doing the best they can as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just regular guys, just saving the day.
Doing the best they
So,
can. Mario, and Luigi Mario.
that's right. That is right. Do you have any other pieces you want to bring up?
Yeah, one small one doesn't quite fit as well, but the concept of going into like a wormhole and popping out on the other side, and it's in a seemingly normal place, would be being John Malkovich.
Okay.
Yeah, they crawl into the small door on the 13 and a half floor, 7th and a half floor, whatever it is, and they pop out. Instead of in a different dimension, they're in John Malkovich's brain.
Yeah.
So it's almost just like, wow, where did this come from in this seemingly normal world that we're living in?
Yeah, well, it's also a very like New Yorker idea
Mhm.
of some kind of big sci-fi project, but like the idea of you get spit out on the New Jersey Turnpike is just like a very New Yorker thing to say,
Yeah.
but that's how it just happens to work here. And I think a lot of that is in Super Mario Brothers for sure. So that's cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then just as just a quick note there too, I picked up the Respect the Fungus or Trust the Fungus. I'm sorry,
Trust the fungus. Yes.
special edition from Umbrella,
Mm.
and there is a ton of behind the scenes and background sort of stuff there. I haven't only scratched the surface on it, but it's like 4 discs and a 350 page book with original concept art and all that kind of behind the scenes stuff, and it's really fascinating looking through some of that stuff. The movie that was planned for is so different than this, and is even more like hyper. It was like Blade Runner,
Yeah.
but with Super Mario Brothers. So
Amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I got to get a copy of that. That's actually why I originally wanted to do this episode, was when that was coming out, and then things get busy,
Yeah.
and then but I still wanted to do the episode, so here we are. But
yeah.
yeah, closing thoughts. Anything else about Super Mario Brothers you want to mention before we wrap it up?
No, it's a certified VHS classic. It's one that every VHS collector should have on their shelf. I've watched it on VHS on 4K within the last couple of years, and you just got to get out of your mind if you're going to watch that you're going to be watching like a competently made movie. It's a
Mm,
fun movie, and it is ridiculous, and let yourself just the ridiculousness wash over you, and watch Bob Hoskin put on a Brooklyn accent for 90 minutes. It's Dennis Hopper's chewing the scenery. He's having a great time. So why won't you have a great time?
exactly. 100%. Pete, tell people what you got going on with the podcast and where they can find you.
Thanks, Dave. So Middle Class Film Class is the show. Go to the YouTube, search in Middle Class Film Class. We stream live every Saturday around noon on Saturdays Pacific time. And episodes come out every Monday, every Wednesday. We have shorts, we have individual reviews, we got all kinds of fun stuff. And, we're heavy on audience participation, listener participation. So hop in and say hi in the live chat or, in the comments.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for coming back. We'll get you back for another one sometime soon.
Great.
All right, we've got Derrick Patterson joining us to talk about Super Mario Brothers. How's it going, Derrick?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I am great. I have been having such a fun time talking about Super Mario Brothers with a whole bunch of great guests for this episode. But when I first thought about doing this one, I was like, I wonder if I could get Derrick Patterson on the show because I always see you as a Nintendo collector and somebody who loves Nintendo so much. And I thought it would be an interesting point of view to get into this movie. And so, I mean, first of all, tell people a little about yourself before we start getting into the movie. Tell them about what you do.
Well, I got a book about myself about the mayor of kindness that things rapidly in the U.S. and internationally, places like Europe, Australia, and some unknown countries as well. But overall, I'm just overactive. I volunteer at the library constantly, but mostly I'm just very active.
Yeah.
I play chess, do some other activities. So
very cool. Very cool. I mean,
yeah.
And as far as like Nintendo is concerned, because I mean, I know you love collecting a lot of great Nintendo memorabilia. You can't see it in my video, but I do have the original Nintendo Mario ceiling fan in my studio here. My collection is not as extensive as someone like you, but how long have you been collecting Nintendo stuff?
2015, so it's been almost a decade.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that collection, it seems to just grow and grow. Let's talk about this movie. When was the first time you saw Super Mario Brothers, the movie? Was it back when it was in theaters?
I saw it on lunch day in Cordova, Tennessee at the Maco Theater. I cosplayed up.
Oh, nice.
Too. But I have to say, there's some positive about the movie and a little bit of negative, but we can get to that about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that I've noticed through all these conversations I've been having about the movie. I feel like everybody's opinion has changed over the years with this movie because, obviously it didn't have the best reputation for many, many years. But nowadays, I feel like people really like it. I know I do. But when I first walked out of that theater in 1993, I was just like, what is going on here?
Oh, yeah. I figure it's very close enough to the games. I mean, it has Mario and Luigi in Brooklyn, been in this warp pipe to this Mushroom Kingdom in some sort. I think it falls to games, although in the games it doesn't show them completely going from Brooklyn into the Mushroom Kingdom, so forth, but in the actual 2023 movie it does.
Right.
But I would have to say this was a much better improvement than the live action one that was in 1993.
So you do like the animated one more than the original live action one?
Right, but I do keep the live action one as a cult classic,
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. What was your first impressions of Super Mario Brothers in 1993 when you first saw it?
Well, I never actually went into the theaters. I mean, of course, with my father. Instead, we watched Jurassic Park instead.
A lot of people
years
did.
after it was released on home video, that's when I started to watch it. And I thought, well, it pretty much takes place in New York, in Manhattan, that you see they do their plumbing and stuff, and they got be the heroes that they are. And they rival this business entrepreneur named Scapelli. And I thought it was okay, but it wasn't that successful what I thought, what me and others thought it would be.
Sure, absolutely. Do you find as you've revisited it over the years that you like it more?
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, I actually have it for DVD on a furniture store that I keep. So I go back to it time to time.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's a fun movie to rewatch, and I think it kind of it grows over the years for sure. Did you think that it included enough stuff from the games?
I mean, it doesn't actually have the princess that we thought it would, but it has that other princess from Super Mario Land,
Mm-hmm.
Daisy, who was an archaeologist
Mm-hmm.
studying bones, some sort.
Yeah. It seems like they took a lot of liberties with the like yes, it's kind of dinosaur based a little bit, the lore of Super Mario, but they really expanded on that and tried to like throw a lot of dinosaur type stuff into the mix.
Yeah, it's more of a dinosaur-like culture of a prehistoric time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought the live action film, like over 3 decades ago, was still a cult classic. But the way that it's set, but on the right side, it has some elements which you see in Super Mario Brothers. I mean, there's few power ups and
Speaking of the power-ups, what did you think of the boots that allow Mario to jump? I thought that was an interesting way to kind of make it more realistic, I guess.
oh yeah, I find it okay. I mean, they use gadget type like props to get their way into battle. And when I went to any kind of Comic Con on whether it's at Arkansas or Mississippi or Alabama,
Mhm.
I see cosplayers just like the live action characters from that film.
Oh, I'm sure. I am sure. There's so many characters that you could really dig into, and that's one thing about the newer Super Mario Brothers movie from 2023 is it has like dozens of games to pick from for all the little Easter eggs and characters and stuff like that. I think in 1993 Super Mario Brothers just didn't have as much to kind of work with.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was still a close classic. I mean, even though it wasn't the right princess in that film, she was the damsel in distress, and
Mhm.
so like many helpless damsels and stuff.
Yeah, sure. I'm curious with all of your Nintendo, memorabilia and all that stuff. Do you have anything specific to the movie?
Oh no, I don't have anything that's product like with the Super Mario live action film.
Okay, yeah, I was curious if they ever made any kind of stuff like that.
However, I do have some for the 2023 animated computer film, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. I bet they made a lot of stuff for that one. Um, yeah, I was wondering, do you have any favorite of your collectibles that you have? Is there any favorite Mario related ones?
Oh yeah, I like the 2.5-inch Mario figures
Okay,
from the Jax products series.
okay, I'm gonna have to look those up.
And the most recent one is the baby princess from last week I posed. Now I got the Monty Mole one as of last week. Yeah.
I still have a Mario like piggy bank. It's a Super Mario, but with the piggy bank for the coins on the head. It's somewhere in a drawer somewhere, but that's from the 80s or early 90s. I mean, it's really old. But I had that with me in sleepaway camp back when I was a kid, so it's a long time ago. But
Oh yeah. I bet you were born somewhere in the 70s or the 80s.
1980 exactly.
Same here.
Yeah, right on, right on. So, any closing thoughts? Anything else about Super Mario Brothers from 1993 that you want to mention?
It's worth rewatching if you like Super Mario Brother fan. But we can be happy to go to the 2023 film if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, tell me some thoughts that you have about that one and how it did things differently.
Well, I thought this was much more of an improvement than it was in the live action one. I mean, they were about this close related to their game counterpart.
Hmm.
Of course, they went into the Mushroom Kingdom from Brooklyn. We actually see their parents and Luigi's getting captured by Bowser's minions.
Yeah. Then we get some Luigi's Mansion in there, which is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, There's a few times in that computer animated series that Mario actually used some power ups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Donkey Kong, of course, may play a big part in that film.
Well, as a big Nintendo fan, I mean, where do you think they go from that movie? I mean, we've seen what they did with the 1993 live action, and we've seen how big of a hit this 2023 animated one was. Where do you think is next for Mario in movies?
Well, there's going to be a possible sequel for 2026, and it has Yoshi showing Yoshi egg shown at the end of the film, where she might be in this possible sequel.
Yeah,
So
maybe it'll be more Super Mario World based, something like that.
it's pretty much going to take off where that last film take off.
Yeah.
The only thing I find negative about the film that the princess didn't had her damsel in distress role as she did in the games, pretty much.
Yeah.
And another criticism I find that Donkey Kong is being the father of Cranky when he's actually the grandson in that other media.
Yeah, that's a weird choice for sure. Uh, yeah, I do wonder where they go from here. I feel like, I mean, there's obviously so much story and there's so much to pick from for where they could go, and they could just add all kinds of stuff in. The thing that I hope, we've been talking in a lot of the other conversations about how experimental and weird that 1993 Super Mario Brothers was, and then
Yeah.
how safe this 2023 cartoon one was. I hope they kind of bridge the gap a little bit and get a little weirder.
Other criticism, I felt that Mario don't need to be taught how to do his training.
I mean, that's the thing. Nowadays with movies, origin stories are just so popular. So it's like they felt like they had to just make another origin story where he finds out how to do all his moves and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's the player that controls Mario how to do these tactics rather than the actual damsel to do it.
For sure. For sure. Well, yeah, I think that's a lot of really great stuff that we got into here. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I've been cosplaying as Mario characters like Mario, Luigi, Shy Guy, Yoshi, and Fire Mario throughout cons.
That's cool. Well, I always love seeing, your pictures with all of your collection and everything. And when you do your cosplay and stuff, I'll have a link in the show notes for how to find Derrick. Well, right on. Derrick, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing the show. And maybe we'll get you back on again for another movie sometime.
Oh, sure, I'll be happy to be on another podcast on you.
All right, we've got Tara Giancaspro with us to talk Super Mario Brothers. How's it going, Tara?
Hello. I largely have commandeered this space to process my feelings about the fact that I find Bob Hoskins unspeakably hot in
Uh,
this film,
yeah.
and that wouldn't really be a thing worth processing. He's a handsome man. The problem is that anytime I've ever told somebody about my father, I say, my dad kind of looks like Bob Hoskins.
Oh boy.
So imagine my feelings here. Never understood it before, understand it now, feeling a way about it. Not happy, bringing it to therapy. Yeah, Bob Hoskins made for a very hot Mario, and I'm
Yes.
upset.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with that statement. I thought actually when you said coming into it this way, I thought it was going to be about processing our childhood heroes. What with you being on our Barbie episode last year, and then our action hero episode with the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, if that's what that movie was called. I can't remember that far
I
back.
think it was.
Yeah, that sounds
Yes.
about right.
Yeah.
Now talking Super Mario, but yeah, I feel like if I don't do anything else in 2024 that's good for the world, at least I got you watching this movie twice in preparation for a podcast. So I've done well.
Yeah, I watched it for the first time this week. I ordered the DVD.
Amazing.
Uh, Spoiler alert, I kind of loved what this movie was presenting, so I'm keeping the DVD and not
Yes.
returning it in the 30-day window. And
Nice.
I watched it about 2 hours ago before we spoke.
I had a feeling you were gonna like
Nice.
this one. I
Nice.
I just had a feeling. It's so ridiculous. It's so over the top. It's so campy, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's so weird. And like this whole super episode, I'm talking to all these people with different points of view. But I mean, this movie has had such a bad reputation for the decades since its release, and I feel like it's finally getting people who recognize it for just the fun that it is.
I mean, I watch complete fucking garbage. So I it you know, this was not something where I was like, "No, I would never watch this." I mean,
Sure.
I actually just watched Samantha Mathis in a movie that I thought was the worst acting I've ever seen, which was I think it's called like All That We Destroy or
Mm.
something. It's a cloning movie.
Ooh.
And when I watched Super Mario, I was like, "Oh, that's the chick who plays the mom in the movie." I
Yeah.
watch garbage. I have seen Patrick Swayze's Skate Town, USA, if that
Mm.
helps anybody at home understand that I will watch anything.
Yeah.
Uh, but I enjoyed this a lot more than again, like there were so many big swings
Mhm.
that there's stuff to grab onto and form an opinion about good or bad. It's not,
Exactly.
it's not like they turned it into a very bland movie or it's not like they made it like a gritty. It is actually kind of a gritty Mario, but it's not gritty in the way of them just turning it into like Dark Knight, which could get
Sure.
boring for this concept. Like I want
Absolutely.
color. I don't want gray and grit and darkness where you can't see the punches that are being thrown.
Absolutely, and nowadays, you make a movie based off a beloved video game property, and it's gonna turn into that. It's gonna be dark, it's gonna be gritty, it's gonna be super serious, and a lot of the times, the tone just gets lost in the process, and so, I mean, we just don't see stuff like this. It's kind of just this little treasure from a moment in time where, a company as huge as Nintendo allowed someone to take big swings with their characters, and that makes this like a really exciting like kind of time capsule in a way of this moment in time. But let's start getting into some things that you think might have actually been inspired by this movie. Do you have anything that was inspired by Super Mario Brothers?
Yeah, I was thinking because I didn't do a lot of research into what came before and what came after, but I was
Hmm.
thinking about movies that were similar, even ones that I haven't seen,
Hmm.
like Hudson Hawk. I have to imagine it feels like a
Okay.
spiritual cousin of this. Um, I've seen Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy definitely feels similar to this, although I actually think Dick Tracy is a better movie than this.
Hmm.
But I will say, I think this is a better movie than Howard the Duck, which is, with the exception of the tumor baby at the end of Akira and my recent experience viewing The Substance.
Amazing.
Howard the Duck is the most visceral disgust I felt while watching a film. Uh, I remember at one point watching Howard the Duck and thinking, because there's the one point where like the duck condom is
Hmm.
kind of presented as something you have to think about. And I'm like,
Yeah.
is the condom spiraled for his duck dick?
These are
And
the questions. You need the novelization to find that out.
and God bless the two-handed directing team that for Super Mario Brothers, where I didn't have to think about spiral duck dicks.
Hmm.
So I'm thrilled. I even like the Goombas. I'm like, you know what? I don't feel visceral disgust looking at them.
Yeah.
They have small little heads, like my beautiful daughter Simone, who is with us
Aw.
as we tape.
Yeah.
And they seemed nice, and they were musical, and they like to dance. So
Yeah.
I actually found them to be very nice. But yeah, Howard the Duck was definitely something where, again, it's taking this property and it's like, how do we put this on a big screen? And the way that the 80s and early 90s like to do that was to add these kind of noir New York elements.
Sure.
The Mask also feels very similar to this.
I think that's a good one, and yeah, nobody has brought up The
Yeah.
Mask yet, and that's actually one that I was thinking about, so I'm
Yeah.
glad you're bringing it up because, yeah, it definitely feels like that kind of a comedic big swing, just crazy, just go along for the ride kinda movie, so yeah, that's a really good one to bring up here, and just to kinda jump back to the ones you were just mentioning, I
Yeah.
also I don't have the dates in front of me or anything. I'm pretty sure Howard the Duck was before, but Dick
Yes,
Tracy
it
and
was.
Hudson Hawk may have been after. I think Hudson Hawk was after, but those are interesting ones too. Again, like all movies that I mean, except for Dick Tracy, that was pretty huge. But I mean, all movies that like were big swings that, you know, if you're not in, you're not in. You're just going to be like, what is happening here?
Hudson Hawk was 91.
Okay. So, yes.
So this could have been somewhat inspirational. I mean, this movie does not fit into movies I've seen of the era.
Mm-hmm.
Which is to say, again, you have Howard the Duck, which was before. You have your Hudson Hawk, Mask, Dick Tracy. Wasn't there a Spirit, like the Spirit movie with Billy Zane? Is that a complete thing that
The
I've made up?
Phantom.
The Phantom. That
Yes.
came after. But again, it's like they were adapting these properties, and we've had this journey of them doing these campy adaptations of properties like Super Mario Brothers.
Mhm.
Then they went into The Dark Knight, and now nothing has color to it. And now they're trying to kind of recalibrate back to something bright and vibrant to adapt these projects like the 2023
Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers movie, which I have not seen, but honestly, again, might make me feel more comfortable because Chris Pratt to me is like a Ken doll, totally
Yeah.
sexless.
Yeah.
And I really did feel that Mario, and again, this might just be me as a woman who loves like a swarthy, hairy kind of man. I
Sure.
was like, I have some complicated feelings about Mario.
Yeah.
I was like a little jealous of Daniela that, you know, he was taking her to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So maybe the 2023 Super Mario Brothers with Chris Pratt isn't as bad as everyone was saying. Maybe it's safer for us all.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, safe is literally the number one word to use to describe that movie in multiple ways.
yeah.
Maybe not specifically the it doesn't have a hairy Mario, but you know, it's safe in a lot of different ways though.
Yeah, but maybe we're finding that balance where I think people are tired of how dark and gritty everything is now. And again, certain properties are great for that, like the Dread with Carl Urban.
Oh yeah.
I thought had brilliant like I think about Lena Headey in that role all the time. I think it's one of the finest performances I've ever seen on film.
She's
And
great.
it's totally appropriate for Dread, and they did something new with it. This Mario, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think it's tonally right, but I don't know if you're ever going to get a tonally right Mario.
Well,
Like,
you know, that's an interesting thing. Just to go on a little tangent back onto
yes.
Dread there, because I think Dread is something I did not expect to come up in any of these conversations.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, talk about a property that the movies haven't quite got in the way that fans of the comics like expected, you know? And that's the problem with the Super Mario Brothers movie is like as much as we had a great time with it, I think at the time it just wasn't what people expected out of Super Mario Brothers. And that's why they kind of revolted. And you know, you either have you know, the first Judge Dredd, you know, that is fun, but you know, maybe a little bit too goofy, or then you have Dread with Carl Urban, which is just super, super serious and dark, and that didn't exactly blow up the box office or anything. I think it's just finding a right tone is a difficult thing with some of these things.
And I don't know what the right tone would be. I mean, obviously doing an animated CGI Mario movie makes sense because it is based on a video game. But if you wanted to do a live action adaptation, what is the solution? Is it taking inspiration from Space Jam?
Mm.
Is it taking inspiration from, and this is what I think might have been most successful at the time, even though I'm talking about a movie that did not do very well, The Rocketeer.
Yeah.
Like, is that where they should have looked to instead of looking at a Howard the Duck? Could it have been a Rocketeer where it's, you know, it's revisionist history, so it's sci-fi in a way, but it really doesn't blast out of full reality.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. This isn't the point of the show, but I do want to ask you, just because we're talking Bob Hoskins here, and we really haven't talked about the performances much across these these conversations. John Leguizamo, what do you think about him as Luigi Mario?
My birthday twin, John Leguizamo, I kind of have to stan. I have never looked at a performance of his and been like, wow, this is ass, or wow,
Yeah.
he really phoned this in. I think he did whatever his director, or directors in this case, asked him to do, and I think he did it well.
Yeah.
Again, I don't look at John Leguizamo and think Italo-American. I look at maybe someone like John Turturro, who
Yeah.
would have been probably a fine Luigi,
Mm-hmm.
but John Leguizamo in this is deeply charming. His little love story I thought was very cute. I like the relationship he had with Bob Hoskins. Again, two actors I would not have expected together. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I knew this was Bob Hoskins, and I think I forgot this was John Leguizamo. So when I
Mm-hmm.
got the DVD, I was like,
You're like,
oh,
no
that's
way.
interest. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We're hitting play. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I've never had an issue with the John Leguizamo performance in my life. So I thought the love story was cute. I kind of thought him and Samantha Mathis had a cute chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the Notebook level? Was it Gone with the Wind? No, it also
Mm.
didn't need to be, because ultimately this is supposed to be a family picture.
Sure.
So, oh, also the other, again, just we're going on tangents here, folks.
Of
This is
course.
not the most cogent movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a movie, but the Dinosaurs TV show obviously feels like some kind of touchstone point for this movie.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
Just
Which
the
is
little the little heads, the little Goomba heads.
yeah, I haven't watched any of that in so many, 20, 30 years or something, but it's just so fun when it like pops back up every few years as memes and like everybody's just posting them. They're always great to see.
Yeah, dark ass ending. See, this movie did not take the dark ass ending, and I appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
funny because this movie actually lifted the Back to the Future ending.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
they might as well have had Daisy go, roads where we're going, we don't need roads, and like
Sure. Yeah.
take
Yeah.
off in a DeLorean, which I liked. I think it's very sweet and very quaint that they thought there was any room for a sequel to this
Yeah.
picture, because I can't even imagine. I guess the sequel would have been something like a Mannequin 2, just like, I don't know what we're doing here, folks, but we have these characters, we need to fit them into a new configuration.
We got to do something.
But yeah, I mean, the performances, listen, Bob Hoskins, again, I'm not getting, it's a me, Mario. It's Bob Hoskins being hot, attempting
Mm.
to be a decent boyfriend,
Yeah.
being fiscally responsible in
Wow.
his
Those are good
way,
qualities. Yeah.
being a gentleman to Daisy. Like, he escorts her out of the van, he wingmans his brother.
Yeah.
Um, he really hates Scapelli, which I thought was just like a little funny thing, because I don't look at the character of Mario from the game and think, oh, this is a character that has anger or petty rivalries.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I thought those were fun shades to the character. I think Bob Hoskins didn't phone it in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really don't. If you compare this to Roger Rabbit, which obviously you have to, and I'm sure
Sure.
every other person has mentioned, I think he brings the same level of respect to the performance. Dennis Hopper
Incredible.
crushed it.
Yeah.
Crushed it. The hair. I still wonder about the aerodynamics of the hair. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to watch some kind of behind the scenes featurette. And the one, and I hope this has been brought up already, and I hope everybody listening to this is like, oh my God, we've heard about her a million fucking times. Shut up. Is Fiona Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did they? I know that Fiona Shaw was not the incredible actor she is now, and known as such on a worldwide basis. Like post Harry Potter, obviously more people were like, oh, that's Fiona Shaw. I think
Mm-hmm.
she is one of our greatest contemporary actors. Like, how the fuck did they get her for this movie? She's incredible in it.
Yeah.
But you watching this movie, to me, I'm like, they might as well have had Laurence Olivier playing one of the Goombas. Like, how
Right.
did they
Right.
get an actor of this skill and electricity? Because
Yeah.
she's so good in this. I love this campy villainess. She reminds me of Fiona from Josie and the Pussycats, Parker
Mm.
Posey's performance, uh,
Yeah.
and the incredible clothes. I'm like, I kind of want the sequel to be all about her.
Well, if we're going by the video games, I mean, maybe Koopa becomes like a semi-good guy where he just wants to kind of help out, even though he's still a bad guy. But and we get Lena as the new villain of the next one. Why not?
Yeah, you give him the like Ben Linus from Lost treatment where you're like, what is he actually up to? But he winds up being pretty good. I would be down for that. But yeah, she was so fun. There's a shot where towards the end she's running through the tunnel and she's just got this long billowing like cloak or dress and her hair is all wild from the electricity shock. And
Oh
I'm like,
yeah.
we are watching a master at work, and genuinely when she gets her like honorary Oscar, I hope that one frame is put in this package for her because she
Oh
really
yeah.
does give you a lot. She's so fun in this. And she's game. Like they have the scene where she shakes her head, but they fast forward it so she shakes her head really fast, like a
Sure.
burp.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's Fiona Ash Shaw.
Yeah.
Again, that might as well be Olivia de Havilland in like Space Jam 3. But I love it. I'm glad she's here.
Yep.
Like I
Absolutely.
kind of wish she had more roles like this in her career. And I
Yeah.
hate to say this because it feels blasphemous, but like put Fiona Shaw in a Marvel movie? Question mark, question mark?
She would
Like,
eat, as the kids say.
like like put her as a Guardians of the Galaxy villain. She would eat left no crumbs.
Absolutely.
Yes, queen. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, God.
Yes, queen, indeed.
Yeah, so I liked all of our little other performances.
Yeah.
I thought it was very strange that they got Dan Castellaneta involved.
I mean, why not though? I mean, he
Yeah, I was worried that this DVD was like a jank region-free DVD and they put the wrong movie on because I'm like, I'm looking at pixelated ass dinosaurs, like Oregon Trail looking dinosaurs, and
Mhm.
Dan Castellaneta, and I'm like, did I grab the wrong movie? Is this like was this the Dinosaurs TV show film adaptation and they put the wrong DVD in my little case from Target? Because that wasn't going to be convenient to record this podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
so now I have to admit, I did not really play Mario much as a kid
Mhm.
to the point where I'm saying Mario and Mario
I go back and forth
interchangeably.
myself, and he's my favorite.
So like I really did not play any of this as much as a kid. Are there dinosaurs other than Yoshi?
Sort of. They're more like reptilian, but they're not like straight up dinosaurs. Now, in the most recent one, they actually did bring in a straight up Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I guess we're kind of bringing it back around to like, oh yeah, by the way, they were dinosaurs all along. But
This doesn't have to be something that's in a Mario movie in the way
no,
that if you were to do another Space Jam movie, like basketball has to be involved.
right,
Or
exactly,
like Uncle Ben has to die in a Spider-Man film.
right, absolutely, yeah.
They were
It
just
doesn't,
like, kids like dinosaurs.
yeah.
Kids are not as interested in plumbing.
Yes, exactly. See, now
Okay.
you get it. The plumbing is key, is more key than the dinosaurs.
Okay. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I was a little confused about that. I was like, again, there's a lot of dinosaur content, and mostly I know that Mario like jumps on things. Like
Yes.
aerodynamics are the
Mhm.
plot point more than dinosaurs.
Yes.
Is the fungus totally specific to this movie?
Well, mushrooms are a major part of,
Yes.
so yeah, you gotta have
Yes.
fungus. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think they ever referred to it as fungus. I think that was more of like a, a clever little, just kinda having fun with the idea that there's mushrooms and it's the mushroom kingdom, but I don't think the
Okay.
word fungus ever really appeared, and they were like, "I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna call it fungus in this
So
movie."
no one has a fungus father in the
No.
game.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Now
we're
something
getting somewhere.
interesting also, there's no like racing in this movie. It's
Mm.
not
Well, now there you go. That would have been, so this is 1993. I wanna say the first, Super Mario Kart game didn't come out until 95, maybe?
okay.
94, 95. So, yes, the racing would not have been around yet at this point.
I wonder if that's kind of why this movie flopped in a weird way because there wasn't enough from the games to fill in the movie. I have
Right.
to imagine the new Chris Pratt movie makes allusions to racing.
It's not,
and
and nonstop Easter eggs, and there's like,
yeah,
15, 20 games to pull from.
yes. So I have to imagine that that's part of why this did not do well. I don't know. What do you think? Like, why do you think this didn't do well?
Well, it also, speaking of dinosaurs, it opens, I don't know about against, but the same year as Jurassic Park. So if you want dinosaurs, we got you covered over here all year
Oh,
long. So,
oh.
yeah.
So nothing was gonna do as well. Yeah, because I mean, here I've been sitting here thinking like, if they had had a different cast, would this movie have done better?
Mhm.
Or if they had had a cast that skewed more towards children, would this movie have done better? Like if you
Right.
got Debbie Gibson to play Lena or
Oh,
Daisy, or like if you had gotten somebody who was a teen idol, a childhood idol, like a Kirk Cameron playing
sure.
Luigi, somebody kind of that kids would recognize. But Jurassic Park has none of that. I mean, who the fuck who's under 10 was like, Bruce Dern's daughter is in this? Seated. Seated. Like no one in Jurassic Park was. I mean, I'm sure a lot of girls and young gays had their sexual awakening looking at Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum, and they were like, will they do kiss? Which is
Yeah,
something that I also wonder when I watch
sure.
this movie, even though I've seen it before.
Yeah,
It's the concept of insanity. You keep watching in the hope that something will change. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's no one in, like, they didn't even get like a Macaulay Culkin to be in Jurassic Park, where it's an actor that kids would recognize and have enjoyed.
Yeah,
So that doesn't necessarily define what's going to be a hit for a
right.
family movie. Um, Maybe it's that it didn't skew kid enough,
That
or because
yeah.
it is kind of adults.
It is a very strangely adulty. I mean, Bob Hoskins alone, I mean, look at him. He's a man, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that man has chest hair growing like into a beard. Like if he had had a beard, the chest hair would be growing and the beard hair would be growing and they would fuse together. He is like
Yes.
the most virile presence one could concoct, other than the fucking bear Jew from Inglorious Bastards, which probably would have been played by Bob Hoskins if Tarantino had made that movie about 40 years prior. Uh, so yeah, it wasn't. I mean, John Leguizamo, like, I don't know if John Leguizamo has ever been invited to the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards.
I mean, he should have been for the pest, but there's a lot of questions of why within this movie. But that's the thing, though, just to bring it back to the beginning of this conversation, big swings, big, just like, let's try something with this property and see what happens. And, it didn't work at the time. But as we can see, we're having a blast with this movie, as well as I think most other people who watch it nowadays. I feel like it's just kind of come back around. And that's why we're all here talking about it. So,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I would recommend it. Like, I would
Yeah,
tell you folks at home, if
100%.
you're still conflicted, I'd be like, yeah, watch the damn movie. Maybe
Yeah.
do a little bit of your own mushrooms that you have at home that
Fair, yeah.
maybe, depending on the state in which you live, legal.
Mhm.
Because I think that could be fun. But there are fun plot point, like the tunnel, like the mattress slide during the tunnel. I watched that and I was
Incredible.
like, this is fun. This
Yeah,
would be fun in any movie. If
yeah,
Back to the Future inexplicably had this whole tunnel mattress scene, I was like, this is fun. It's like
yeah.
watching the Harry Potter, like the Gringotts, like them going through the tunnels. Like they did deploy stuff that kids would like. I just think they didn't lean enough into kid. It might have
Mm,
been different if Mario had like, maybe if Luigi was like a young teenager and it was that mentor relationship, like
mm.
you get like an 11-year-old, like a Jonathan Brandeis type,
Yeah, I mean, as
y-
long as we're taking,
you know?
big liberties with the property, I mean, you could totally do that and make him a kid and just change the whole dynamic. But I think probably a bunch of the stuff we brought up, was, didn't exactly do as well as maybe had been hoped at the time. But,
I mean,
you
yeah.
know,
This is at
so
least something interesting to watch. And
yeah,
if you at home like practical effects, I mean, this movie has really interesting practical effects. They
yeah.
have, the dynamic, like the spring shoe. They have the fungus, which I actually thought was visually really well done. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if it was one of the big special effects greats or one of their mentees who had been involved in the fungus.
Yeah. The spring shoe is a fun way to kind of visualize why Mario jumps so high, which
Yes.
like didn't need to be explained, but like, hey, why not? Let's go sci-fi and just give him these crazy boots. Like, sure.
I mean, moon shoes were popular in that era, so
Huge.
kids love aerodynamics.
Yes, of course.
Based on the games, based on the sale of moon shoes, based on Michael Jordan and his various leaps.
Oh, yeah.
Kids
Absolutely.
like aerodynamics.
Did
That's
Super
something
Mario
we've
Brothers
learned.
inspire Michael Jordan and Air Jordan?
The Super Mario Brothers movie is responsible for the, I don't know, 1986, Bulls performance and various records broken that season. I don't know.
I think we figured it out.
Sports. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good last one to wrap it up with. Tara, tell people where they can find you and everything you're up to.
Sure. I am on Substack. It's taragiancaspro.substack.com. I write about pop culture. I write about the various and sundry of my stupid little life. And you can find me shit posting Frasier memes and lusting after Stanley Tucci, I don't know, on Twitter and Instagram at Sweaty Lamar. Yes, that's like Hetty Lamar. Yes, you are allowed to slide into my DMs and ask if it's a Blazing Saddles reference, as about 5 of you do every week of my life. It is sort of, but it's mostly for Hetty Lamar.
Nice. Well, hey, thank you so much, Tara, for doing the show. I'm so glad you enjoyed the movie, and I look forward to getting you back again sometime.
Yes, please. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, we've got the VG Mobster with us to talk about the Super Mario Brothers 1993 film. How's it going, man?
I'm good. Finally, been a long time coming, so I'm happy I could finally make it. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
Absolutely. I was thinking to myself as I was putting together a guest list for this one, I was like, I gotta have someone who's like, a video game, either podcast or streamer, something like that, to talk about Super Mario. So I'm really happy this worked out and we're getting you on the show. Since it is your first time on the show, though, tell my listeners a little about you and your show.
Yeah. So I'm the VG Mobster. I do some YouTube Switch content. I also do a lot of video game music as well. So I actually have a project coming out November 7th. It's going to be a full length 12-song album based on all video game IPs. Kind of like a hip hop style, but there's a lot of other different styles on there as well, but mostly hip hop. And then also got a lot of other video game community members to be in on the record, so it's really fun.
Oh, nice!
So I'm super excited about it.
That sounds really cool. Off mic, I'll have to send you my Mortal Kombat song from back in college.
Do it. I have one too. I have a Mortal Kombat song, so we'll swap.
Yes, absolutely. So to the topic at hand, Super Mario Brothers, this movie that has this insane reputation, and a lot of that reputation is deserved because it is an insane movie, but it's also, I think, a lot better and more inventive and more imaginative than people gave it credit for. How long ago did you first see it, and what have your thoughts? Have they changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, the movie came out, what, 93? 93, right? So I was 10 when it came out. I mean, when I was, obviously my my opinions from 10 to now are like totally different. I remember, like, I didn't see it in the theaters. I saw it like a little after it came out, just because it was Super Mario. Like, I had to see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would just, again, I think I was just like everybody else. It was just not the direction I thought they were going to go with the movie. And it was like, they said that they wanted to make it kid friendly, but I don't really think it was like too kid friendly. So when I was a kid, I was just kind of like a little confused. I was like, okay, this is not what I envisioned at all.
Yeah, that's a fair reaction for a 10-year-old to go into this and just be like, what did they do to Mario? But I feel like this movie has grown for me so much over the years, and I mean, obviously for you, like, just dedicating so much time and energy to video games, still at this point, like, when's the last time you watched it?
Oh man, the last time I watched it was probably like I'd say like 6 months before the new movie came out, just because I wanted to like go back and kind of like, let me look like kind of like the Sopranos finale. I had to go back and see it again just to like say, okay, you know what? Like the shock is over. Now I can watch it with like a new set of eyes. That was what I kind of did with Mario. I was like, before I see the animated one, which is what most people probably wanted back in the day. Let me go back to this one and just kind of, see if maybe like with age or with time, it's changed. It was totally different from when I was a kid, because I knew going in, I'm like, okay, I know not to expect what I expected back then. Now to go in with a totally different outlook on it.
Absolutely. It changes total perspective. So, so going on to, what this movie might have inspired, your first time on the show, but I'm interested in hearing what you've got. What do you think Super Mario Brothers, the 1993 film, might have inspired?
Man, I mean, this is it's kind of a weird one, because when I researched it, they were saying that the initial concept, it was kind of weird for me to hear this, but they were saying that they were trying to go for kind of like a little more kid-friendly Batman type of movie, which I saw it again and I was like, I do not think they hit that mark, unfortunately. So that was kind of like a different way. When I went back, I was like, this is kind of because I wanted to also see like, okay, what were they trying to do? Like at that time, you know what I mean? Like try to get in the filmmakers' head a little bit, and see what they were doing. Because I was like, okay, well, maybe if I knew what they were going for, maybe like I would even on the second or the third viewing, I would, change my perspective or look at it in a slightly different lens than what I would have thought. Just going in blind again, just after all these years. But yeah, so when I heard that and then I saw it again, I was like, yeah, that actually really didn't help me at all, because I don't think it really like did anything to it. But I just thought that was interesting that they said that.
That is interesting. I mean, with Batman as an influence of the movie, allegedly, maybe you could see some influence of this movie on some future Batman movies, even like Batman and Robin in 1997. Just like total crazy, over the top, like vision.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and they were like, I guess too, like how the villain was portrayed. Maybe I could kind of get that, like with Koopa, like how King Koopa, how he was kind of like portrayed here. I was like, okay, maybe like, they're trying to go like a little darker and more realistic with the villain than in terms of like being cartoony and animated like he had always been.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm stretching there, but I was trying to like kind of relate that to that. But yeah, I think for me, like, it was weird because it has a tone that it's trying, like you can tell that they are trying to also entertain the parents as well as the kids that are going to it. So like there were definitely some darker tones. I have heard, and I can see like a Matrix kind of thing. I can kind of see that, because it's just like these worlds within worlds, or they're jumping all over the place, and like a lot of the villains are not really what you would kind of expect, and just the way like the story is very like chopped up and not like super super linear and straightforward, which you would have thought they would have done for that, like this type, like an IP, a game based off an IP of like cartoon characters, like I feel like the way that they did it, and they were like taking a chance maybe and trying to make it a little more just like different, or like different than expectations. Maybe the filmmaker did want to do that as well, and maybe that like kind of challenged him, and I think that I could totally see that comparison. Just based off of that,
I think the Matrix is a fair one to bring up here. I mean, there is a world underneath our world, and the Matrix, the ideas may be a little more fleshed out, a little more fully formed. But
loosely, let's put loosely under that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the Matrix. I think it's entirely possible that a movie like The Matrix is inspired by this crazy ass movie. I do want to kind of like lead you a little bit, because as as a video game guy, somebody with a video game streaming channel and who puts so much time into video games, one of the other guests of this episode brought up what I jokingly called the holy trinity of Mortal Kombat, Double Dragon, and Street Fighter, which all came out soon after the 1993 Super Mario.
Correct, yeah.
Are there any other video game movies that you think maybe kind of took a similar approach as this one?
See, that's the thing. I think because the movie also, well, now this is another thing I was actually going to kind of bring up on the topic. It's like, because the movie really just bombed and really like critically and, box office wise, like, I mean, people could have kind of like got inspired by it, but they could have also been inspired to do differently.
The opposite of inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're like, okay, this is like what we don't want to do. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't successful, and like people that it was not only the critics too, it was like the people going to the movie. They were just like, what is this? Like, what's going on here? Like, we're not doing Peach, we're getting Daisy. Like what's going on here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the normal tropes of the series, like I feel like they were just very loosely guided to. So I think like a lot of movies also, like, yeah, they could have been inspired by elements like when you're a deep filmmaker, like I have a lot of people and friends that are into filmmaking and do like independent film festivals and create films and stuff like that. Like when you're into that world, when you're into making, cinematic content, a lot of times your inspirations are from good movies and from bad movies.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like it's not only the classics, like you take elements even from movies that overall may not have been good, but you take elements from it, So I think in terms of for this movie inspiring other movies, it could be also because filmmakers just have such a vast library in their heads to pull from. They could be like, hey, the way that this movie did this, okay, yeah, I may not like theme it after the whole movie in general, like overall, but some concepts, like maybe the cinematography, the way that, the dialogue from a villain in particular, or, what I'm saying? Like they might even just take elements from it. Yeah. And you could see that into other movies. But I think overall, that's definitely a thing I wanted to talk about. It's like, they also might have seen this movie and said, okay, you know what? We don't want to do it like this.
Yeah.
Like we want to go in a different direction because obviously that wasn't hitting at the time. But
I'll tell you a movie that I'm a huge fan of, even though it was very critically and audiences also kind of rejected it. But Rampage with The Rock.
Yes.
I love that movie, and I think it does a similar thing balance-wise of taking from the property, but also just kind of doing its own thing and only using a little bit from the property. And I think that's something that Super Mario Brothers 1993 does, in that, you got the Mushroom Kingdom, you've got Mario and Luigi, you got King Koopa, but then you're kind of also doing a completely different kind of story. And so I think in a way, I think Rampage kind of fits the bill here as something that could be brought up that might have been inspired in some way here.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're like loosely you're doing the core elements of the IP, but then you're paving your own way.
Exactly.
Going off of that.
Unlike the new Super Mario Brothers movie, which was like exactly the game.
And it's so funny because that movie, even though like I can argue the new Super Mario movie, like if you compare it to the old one, again, it was maybe it was a little even too safe,
right?
And I think that might have been to its detriment as well. You got to give the 93 movie, at least it did try to do its own thing in some sense. Like maybe they didn't work as well, but they went out there. They're like, hey, like we are the filmmakers. We do want to make something that we feel even the parents who don't play the games would get a kick out of, or get some inside jokes, or so like something, even slip some more mature dialogue in there. So the kids will just get the surface level, but the adults will get more of the they would get the higher end elements.
Absolutely. Well, any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to mention about Super Mario Brothers before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, I think and it's funny because like looking back at the movie too, like it's funny because you know how they say like time, heals a lot of wounds. I have to tell you though, once the new Mario movie came out, and it was really the movie that I think people really expected, or like in their heads envisioned the movie would be, at that time. A lot of people I saw like on Reddit threads and stuff, they were saying, I went back and I watched the 93 movie and it's really not as bad as I thought, because I feel like they went in with expectations that were like so high.
Yeah.
Because Mario was such a big cultural phenomenon back then. And you got to understand too, I feel like with cultural phenomenon back then, it was even harder to be a bigger cultural phenomenon because they didn't have social media. We didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
So for Mario and entertainers like Michael Jackson and stuff like that to achieve that level of notoriety and stuff was even a harder thing to do, and you had to be even bigger than what you had to be now to attain that success. So I feel like when people saw that, their expectations were so high, and then it just didn't hit the mark. But now when we go fast forward 25 30 years and people go back and see it, and the reception was definitely much kinder than it was back in the day, I feel. Anyway. I think that's an interesting thing to see from being a kid when the actual movie came out to now seeing this movie, which did, like $2 billion, almost $2 billion, or maybe $2 billion or something. To compare the two, and now the people who have access to both are kind of like a lot of I'd say like 35% are actually leaning towards the original movie now.
Well, and I think
that was super interesting.
I think that insane success is kind of a little bit of a golden handcuff situation for Nintendo because they are going to just greenlight the safest stuff going forward. I think that Zelda movie that they have in development with Wes Ball is going to be so safe and just stick to the formula. And it makes the Super Mario Brothers 1993 film even more of a special thing that really could have only existed then.
Yeah. You're right. We're probably not going to see them do that again.
Yeah, something
because
weird.
They just in their heads are like, no, we're not going to allow it. Even if, it's just funny, even if as a film, it might even be more beneficial for the sake of the quality of the film to kind of veer off, the path and make a more unique story that can be, kind of take advantage of the cinematic medium more.
Yeah.
But they won't do it because of just how bad the reception was, and for how many years Nintendo until then they never even dipped their toe back in the medium again. So it's crazy. But like you said, it's kind of like you're right. It's kind of like a time capsule piece that you go back and you look and you're like, man, this was now looking back at it, you're like, they really did take some chances. And, it may not have been 100% done to the, standards that they wanted. But when you look back, you definitely appreciate that at least they, took a shot at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the VG Mobster, happy to have you on the show. Tell people where they can find your channel and everything you're up to.
Yeah. Just go to youtube.com/VG Mobster or on X @VG Mobster. I interact with a lot of the community there. I have a group on Twitter as well, Switch Mob, which is really fun. We all talk about Nintendo Switch games and just Nintendo in general. Today is a big day.
Zelda.
The new Zelda game dropped, so we're all really excited about that.
I wish I had time to play it. I just don't have time, but it's going to be, it'll be my first game back once I have a little bit of free time. So.
Oh yeah. No problem. I mean, this, I always tell people this month of games has just been insane for me because three of my most anticipated games of the whole year came out in the same month. So super weird, but it's going to keep me occupied.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you carved out a little time for this, and hopefully we'll get you back sometime for another movie.
Oh yeah. Anytime, man. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Super Mario Brothers Thank you so much to Kevin Brackett, Joe Black, Pete Abeyta, Derrick Patterson, Tara Giancaspro, and the VG Mobster for joining me on that one. Lots of great puzzle pieces, lots of great points of view and ideas of what went right and what went wrong, and just all kinds of interesting things to get into with this crazy movie. So thank you to all of them for joining me, and thank you to you for listening. If you are enjoying piecing it together, make sure you're subscribed. We've got a lot of episodes on the way. I think I've got like 6 in the can at the moment that they're all going to be coming out in the coming weeks. I also have more live shows lined up, which will be hitting the feed soon. At the time of this recording, we'll have just recorded one on Joker Folie à Deux in the theater with a great lineup of guests. And then next week, we've got Terrifier 3. That's October 12th at Downtown Cinemas. So live shows, lots of them on the way. Got some other exciting stuff coming up. So make sure you're subscribed. You'll find out about all of it as it comes. You could also follow me on social media at PiecingPod, join our Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, and check out our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there. So check that out. So I always close these episodes out with a piece of my music, and I'm sure I've got some, music from video games I've done, scores for in the past. I don't think any of the movies I've worked on have had anything that even relates at all to Super Mario Brothers. But, rather than trying to dig around looking for a video game score that I've done, I'm actually going to play you. This is, I said at the top, it is my birthday after all. And I'm so excited about the fact that this month I'll be launching my 3rd album of the Pup Pups, my silly comedy novelty group of songs about my pets. And I'm going to preview a song from that upcoming 3rd album of the Pup Pups, which the pre-order should be launching any day now. And once the pre-order goes up, you'll be able to get your pet's name on a special bonus song. So keep an eye out for that. But I'm going to play a song about my own little Super Mario-like cat, Millie Moo. She is very, very predictable in the crazy little things she does. And this is a song about her called So Predictable. So I hope you enjoy it. And we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon. Jumping from the couch to the counter, knocking the remote on the floor. Just when you get done with your kibble, we know that you'll be crying for more. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. Doing things that making us crazy. You're so predictable. You know it makes your mama nuts. And every single day in the morning, you always smack your sister cat's butts. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. Playing with the toy, crying when she lost it. She's always in the sink just trying to drink from the faucet. Laying on her back and looking oh so cute. But we know exactly what you're going to do. You're so predictable. So predictable. Just so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.